We're the Wilberts, and we're Mormon. Are we? No. I don't know. We can do it again. You want to do it again? On paper, we look like any other LDS couple. Came home from a mission in Brazil and went back to BYU. Grew up in California and met a woman probably within, what was it, 2 weeks of getting back from the mission and meeting Sonja. And then I would say 4 months later, we actually dated. 4 months later, we were engaged. And 4 months later, we were married. That's paper. And that's not what we look like. And that's the funny story about it, I think.
So how I met the missionaries was I had a neighbor who, her aunt was a member of the church, and the missionaries were coming over just to visit. So after school one day, a friend of mine and I were heading to my house, and she happened to see one of the missionaries, and she thought he was really cute. So, so she asked me if I would go over and keep them occupied until she could come over to my house after school the next day. So what better way to keep the missionaries occupied than to go over and, talk to them. And, of course, they're going to start talking about the church. And so I listened to their whole spiel about the church and the Book of Mormon. And I thought it was interesting. And when she came over, she was like, okay, well, he's not as cute as I thought he was. And so she had, completely lost interest. But I didn't. I was a little bit intrigued about the church and the Book of Mormon. And so I continued to take the discussions and prayed about it and got an answer that, I should join. So I was baptized. My family did not respond well at all. My stepfather gave me an ultimatum that if I joined the church that I had to leave the house. And so I said, okay, I'm going to join. And I ended up living with my aunt until I graduated from high school.
Yeah, I was introduced to the church. I was about 4-ish and 4 years old. And my mom was tracked it out, which means missionaries were knocking on doors in her neighborhood. And this is back in the early 70s, 74. Now you know my age. So they knocked on her door, and she didn't want anything to do with it. And she thought they were selling things and whatnot. And they usually sold books and things back in the day. But they didn't want to sell her anything. They just wanted to talk to her about, the church. And it's funny, when I say the church, you think, this is Dan Brown organization that's coming to get you. No, it's they wanted to share the good news. And she felt that when she turned them away, so impressed personally not to turn them away that she said, okay, you can come back next week or what have you. So they came back and they started teaching her. And remember, this is 1974, and my dad wasn't interested in any of that, but he allowed this to take place because the missionaries themselves were very, they acknowledged his presence and his part of the relationship. And he really liked that. He's from the South. And so, they respected who he was, and this was his home. And because they offered that kind of respect, he goes, yeah, okay, we'll have this happen. And so she became a member of the church. She got baptized. And she took us with them. At the time, I had one sister at the time. I had another sister later on when I was 16. But at the time, I had one sister and myself. And we were young, and we would just go to church. And that's what was my life up until 18, when I graduated from high school and went on a mission. I would go to church, and it would just be my mom and my sister. And there's a lot of activities in the church, a lot of things they do. And it'd be my mom and my sister. And at times my dad would show. At times I would be with the bishop, or there's a lot of youth leadership, which is amazing. And I can't believe I'll say this, but it's like a village. there's a lot of people there to help you grow.
Raising my kids in the church is actually it's been a blessing. You see there's so many things going on out there in the world, and kids are not allowed to be kids anymore. It's like we've now put all of this stuff on them, and so just raising them LDS kind of pushes back against the world a little bit, where you're allowing them to continue to be kids, to be innocent, to just grow in a way that is good. I tell my girls, you can make any decision that you want in life. You can work or you can stay home, but that's your choice. And I would ideally like for you to pray about it, because, at certain times in your life when you may have to work, there may be certain times that you don't have to work. You may never get married. You may be single your entire life, and that's okay. You can always adopt my grandchildren. And so, but I'm always, there's not one way to be LDS. And I tell them, you choose your path. That's between you and Heavenly Father. And, the blessing of the church is that it gives you tools to teach them, just the basics, what you need to do to stay in tune with the Lord. And then everything else is between you and Him. If you have an issue, if you have a problem, you can talk to me about it. And if you feel like you can't talk to me about it, you can always go to the Lord with it. You can always pray about it. And I know that you'll get an answer.
Because there is such a system of support of people who are just trying their darndest to raise their families in an environment so that they can then become proactive, strong members of society, is a great thing. Because when you're doing it by yourself, it's tough. And especially if you're in a family that either you're single parent or any other issue, it's really, really hard. And even if you have mom and dad and everything's great, it's still very hard. You want the support, you need the support. And the church has a support system because that's what it's all about. And having the leadership and the friendship most importantly, and something to do, idle hands, the devil's workshop, that are helping and then teaching you how it's important to serve people and to do things for other people, not yourself, especially at a young age, that changes you.